"You disgusting old woman!" Vanessa's palm cracked across the 70-year-old's face like a whip. Margaret Castellano crumpled against her pillows, tears streaming down wrinkled cheeks. "You think anyone cares if you live or die?" Vanessa grabbed the pill bottles from the nightstand and hurled them across the room. White tablets exploded against the wall, scattering across cold marble like broken teeth. "The sooner you stop breathing, the sooner I get everything." She spat on the floor beside the bed and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. What Vanessa didn't know was that her fiancé, the most powerful mafia boss in New York, was watching every second from a hidden room 20 feet away. And the black maid trembling outside that door would expose a truth that would destroy Vanessa's perfect world forever. Victor Castellanos' hand crushed the armrest of his chair as he watched his fiancée slap his mother across the face. 17 years in the underworld. 17 years of blood and betrayal and bullets. And nothing had prepared him for this. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. On the center monitor, Vanessa smoothed her hair, checked her reflection in Margaret's bedroom mirror, and walked out without a backward glance. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving the 70-year-old woman alone with pills scattered across the floor and a red handprint blooming on her cheek. Victor's jaw locked so tight, his teeth ached. 3 hours ago, Vanessa had stood in the main hall waving goodbye as his SUV pulled away toward the airport. Her smile had been soft. Her eyes had been warm. Her lips had formed the words she always said when he left. "I love you. I'll miss you. Come back to me soon." He had almost believed her. The SUV had circled the block and dropped him at the service entrance. 20 minutes later, he was sealed inside the surveillance room, hidden behind the library's false wall, watching 6 monitors that showed every corner of his home. His mother had planted the seed 3 weeks ago. She had gripped his hand with surprising strength and said, "Watch how she treats your mother when she thinks no one is looking. That's her real face, my son." He hadn't wanted to believe it. Now he couldn't deny it. Victor rewound the footage 30 minutes and forced himself to watch again. The front door closed behind his departing car. Vanessa's loving smile vanished like someone had ripped a mask off her face. Her shoulders pulled back, her eyes went cold. She pulled out her phone and dialed. "He's gone, finally gone. Come here now." 20 minutes of silence. Then the gates opened for a sleek black Audi, the Christmas gift Victor had given his finance manager. The car Derek Thompson had thanked him for with tears in his eyes, talking about how his wife and kids finally had reliable transportation. Derek Thompson, who had worked for the Castellano family for 8 years. Derek Thompson, who had access to every account and investment. Derek Thompson, who was now walking through Victor's front door and pulling Victor's fiancée into a hungry kiss. They were standing in the exact spot where Victor had knelt to propose 6 months ago. Victor's knuckles went white against the armrest. He watched Vanessa lead Derek to the living room, watched them settle onto the red velvet sofa he had imported from Italy for her birthday, watched Derek pour wine while Vanessa stretched like a satisfied cat. "I've been waiting all week for this," she said. Derek glanced toward the door. "We should be careful. What if he comes back early?" Vanessa laughed. Not the sweet musical laugh Victor knew. This laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Victor! He's pathetically predictable. When he says Sicily for a week, it's Sicily for a week. The man runs his life like a military operation." She took a sip of wine. "Besides, even if he found out, what would he do? Kill me. He is a mafia boss. He's a lonely man desperate to be loved, and desperate men are easy to control." The words hit Victor like bullets. Desperate. Easy to control. Is that what he had become? He thought of every time Vanessa had touched his face and said he worked too hard, every time she had curled against him and whispered she was the luckiest woman alive, every tear she had cried when he slipped the ring onto her finger. Performance, all of it. He had been the mark, the fool, the desperate man writing checks and planning a wedding while his fiancée plotted behind his back. On the monitor, Derek pulled documents from his briefcase. "The prenuptial agreement is revised. After the wedding, any divorce gives you 60% of his assets." Vanessa frowned. "Divorce is too slow." "What do you mean?" I mean, I've spent a year playing the perfect fiancé, smiling when I wanted to scream, saying I love you when the words made me sick, putting up with that old woman every single day like she actually matters. The mother is a problem, Derek agreed. She doesn't like you, I can tell. If she convinces Victor to restructure his will or move assets around, then we deal with her first. Victor stopped breathing. Vanessa leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. I know a doctor. For the right price, he'll declare anyone mentally incompetent. Dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever sounds convincing. Once the paperwork goes through, we move her to a facility somewhere far away, somewhere Victor won't want to visit. And then we wait. A year, maybe 2. Until I'm in the will, until I have access to everything. She paused. And then accidents happen. A car crash, bad medication, a fall. Derek stared at her. You're talking about murder. I'm talking about our future. Victor's hand moved to his chest. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it through his ribs. She wanted him dead. The woman he had loved, trusted, planned to marry, she was sitting on his sofa, planning his murder. But that wasn't what pushed him to the edge. It was what came next. The old woman first, Vanessa said. Once she's out of the picture, Victor will be vulnerable, lonely. He'll lean on me more, trust me completely. She smiled. And when the time is right, I'll be a very wealthy widow. Victor's vision tunneled. His mother, the woman who had raised him alone after his father was gunned down, who had worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, who had taught him everything about loyalty and honor and protecting the people you love. Vanessa wanted to lock her away, declare her incompetent, erase her from his life, then kill him and take everything. Victor reached for the door handle. Every instinct screamed at him to burst out, find Vanessa, wrap his hands around her throat and squeeze until the light left her eyes. But his mother's voice echoed in his memory. Don't react with anger, my son. React with intelligence. Let your enemies think they've won, then destroy them when they least expect it. Victor forced his hand away from the door. He picked up his phone and called Marcus. Full surveillance on Derek Thompson and Vanessa Sterling. 24 hours. Every call, every meeting, every dollar. How long? Until I say stop and run a deep background on Vanessa, not surface level, everything. Birth records, employment, criminal history. Go back as far as you can. You think we missed something? Victor stared at the monitor where Vanessa was laughing at something Derek said. I think we've been looking at a mask. I need to see what's underneath. He ended the call and switched cameras. His mother's room appeared on screen, and Victor felt his chest tighten. Margaret sat propped against pillows, her thin white hair combed back, her hands trembling from the Parkinson's that had slowly stolen her strength. But her eyes were still sharp, still intelligent, still holding the fire that had made her the true power behind the Castellano family for decades. And sitting beside her holding a book of poetry was the black maid Victor had barely noticed in 2 years. Grace Williams. He had seen her countless times, cleaning rooms, serving meals, helping his mother with daily tasks. But he had never really looked at her. Now he studied her face through the camera. Late 20s, warm brown skin, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, simple uniform. But something about the way she held herself spoke of quiet dignity, of strength that didn't need to announce itself. She was reading aloud, her voice soft and musical. Something about the sea and distant horizons. Margaret smiled, a genuine smile Victor rarely saw anymore. That was beautiful, Grace. Read it again. Grace smiled back, and Victor noticed something. Her smile reached her eyes. Vanessa's smile never reached her eyes. Of course, Miss Maggie. But first, let's take your medication. The doctor says staying on schedule is important. She reached for the pill. Organizer shook out the morning dose, poured fresh water, helped Margaret sit up straighter. Every movement was gentle, patient, careful. There you go. Nice and comfortable. Margaret took her pills, then reached out and squeezed Grace's hand. You're too good to me, child. I don't know what I'd do without you. Grace's expression softened into something that looked almost like love. You're my family, Miss Maggie. Taking care of you isn't work. It's an honor. Victor felt something stir in his chest. He had never heard any staff member speak about his mother that way. Most were professional, efficient, detached. They did their jobs and collected paychecks, but Grace said family like she meant it. The peace shattered when the door burst open. Vanessa stood in the doorway, her earlier warmth completely gone. Her eyes swept the room with undisguised contempt. "Get out! I need to talk to her alone." Grace rose slowly. Victor noticed her body shift, positioning itself between Vanessa and the bed. A subtle movement, protective. "Miss Vanessa, Mrs. Castellano needs rest. The doctor said—" "I don't care what the doctor said. Get out." Grace looked at Margaret. Margaret gave a small nod. "It's all right, child. Go ahead." Grace walked toward the door, but she moved slowly, reluctantly. She cast one last look at Margaret before stepping into the hallway. Through the hallway camera, Victor watched her stop just outside the door. She didn't leave. She stood rigid, listening ready. His attention snapped back to his mother's room. Vanessa closed the door and turned. The transformation was instantaneous. The socialite mask disappeared, completely replaced by something cold and predatory. "Let's get something straight, old woman." Margaret's chin lifted. "I've told my son nothing that isn't true. You're not worthy of him." "Worthy?" Vanessa laughed. "This isn't about worth. Your son is a means to an end. Nothing more." She paced the room, heels clicking against marble. "Do you know how hard I've worked? A year of pretending to love a man who bores me. A year of smiling and nodding while his touch makes my skin crawl. Then leave. No one's forcing you. And give up everything." Vanessa stopped pacing. "Not a chance. In 3 weeks I'll be Mrs. Castellano, and things will change." She stepped closer to the bed looming over the elderly woman. "Starting with you. Vincent will never let you hurt me." Vanessa smiled, the smile of someone holding all the cards. "Victor won't even know. I have a doctor friend, specializes in cases like yours. Elderly women who've become confused, dangerous to themselves." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "One evaluation. That's all it takes. Then you'll be in a facility somewhere far away. Somewhere your precious son won't visit because the staff will make sure you don't even remember his name." Tears began streaming down Margaret's face. Vanessa's smile widened. "Crying won't help. Nothing will help." She walked to the nightstand, looked down at the medication, then swept her arm across, sending everything crashing to the floor. Pills scattered everywhere, under the bed, into corners, across cold marble. "You don't need these anyway. The sooner you're gone, the better for everyone." Margaret's voice came out low and steady despite her tears. "I pity you, Vanessa. You'll never know what real love feels like. You'll spend your whole life taking, and in the end, you'll have nothing." Something flickered across Vanessa's face. For one moment, the mask slipped. Victor saw pain underneath, raw and ancient. Then the mask slammed back. Her hand came up fast. The slap cracked through the room like a gunshot. Margaret's head snapped sideways. Red bloomed across her wrinkled cheek. "Save your pity for yourself." Vanessa walked out without looking back. In the surveillance room, Victor's whole body shook. Not fear, rage. A rage so pure it felt like fire replacing blood. She had hit his mother, the woman who had sacrificed everything for him, who had loved him when no one else would, who had held him through nightmares after his father's murder. Vanessa had slapped her like she was nothing. Victor's hand moved to the door. Then movement on another monitor caught his eye. Grace pushed open the door to Margaret's room the instant Vanessa's footsteps faded. "Miss Maggie?" She rushed to the bedside, her face stricken. "What did she do? Are you all right?" Margaret couldn't answer. The tears she had held back finally broke free, streaming down her face in silent rivers. Grace didn't ask more questions. She pulled the elderly woman into a gentle embrace, one hand stroking thin white hair. "It's okay. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Then she looked at the pills scattered across the floor. Without a word, she lowered herself to her knees, and she began to pick them up, one by one, pill by pill. Victor watched as Grace carefully examined each tablet, wiped them clean with the hem of her uniform, checked for cracks, Some had rolled under the bed. She stretched to reach them. Some had bounced into far corners. She crawled across cold marble to retrieve them. She didn't complain, didn't sigh, didn't rush. She gathered every last pill like each one was precious, because to her they were. Those pills were Margaret's lifeline. They helped manage her Parkinson's, gave her some control over a body that was betraying her. Vanessa had knocked them to the floor with contempt. Grace was recovering them with love. The contrast hit Victor like a physical blow. When Grace had gathered every pill, she found a clean cloth, wiped down the organizer, placed each tablet back in its proper compartment. Then she poured fresh water and returned to Margaret's side. "Let's take your medicine, Miss Maggie. We can't miss a dose." Margaret looked up at her wonder in her tear-stained face. "Why do you stay, child? You could find another job. Leave this house and never look back." Grace's brown eyes shone with light that seemed to come from somewhere deep. "Because you're my family, the only real family I have, and I don't abandon family. Not ever." She took Margaret's hand. The old woman held on like Grace was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. Victor stared at the screen. For 2 years, Grace Williams had been invisible. Another face among staff, another name on payroll. Now, for the first time, he truly saw her. A young woman who knelt on cold marble to gather scattered pills, who held his mother's hand and called her family, who stood guard outside closed doors ready to intervene. Kindness in its purest form. While he had been searching for love in Vanessa's perfect smile, the real light had been in this house all along. Quiet, humble, invisible, but brighter than anything Vanessa could pretend to be. Victor picked up his phone. "Marcus, I need a full background on Grace Williams, household staff. Been here about 2 years. Silence on the other end. Then, the maid. Priority 1. Everything you can find." He ended the call and switched cameras to follow Grace as she left his mother's room. She walked down the hallway toward the service stairs. Her shoulders were straight. Her steps were steady. Nothing in her posture revealed what she had just witnessed or the emotion she must be feeling. Then she passed a hallway mirror and stopped. Victor watched her reflection. For just a moment, her mask slipped. Pain flickered across her face. Exhaustion. Sorrow so deep it seemed bottomless. She closed her eyes, drew a breath, and when she opened them, the mask was back. She continued down the stairs to the basement. Victor followed her through the cameras until she reached her room. It was barely bigger than a closet. A narrow bed, a battered nightstand, a small wardrobe that looked decades old, no windows, no natural light, just the pale yellow glow of a cheap lamp. Grace sat on the edge of her bed, still in uniform. She reached into the nightstand drawer and pulled out a photograph. Old, yellowed, creased from years of handling. Victor zoomed in. A little girl stared out from the picture. 7 or 8 years old. Gap-toothed smile. Eyes bright as stars. Hair in 2 neat braids. Wearing a dress too big for her small frame. Grace held the photograph like it was the most precious thing in the world. Her shoulders began to shake. Victor realized she was crying. Silent tears. The kind people learn to cry when making noise brings more pain. Her tears fell onto the photograph, and she wiped them away carefully, protecting the image. This was private grief, personal sorrow. The kind of moment no one was meant to witness, but Victor couldn't look away. After a long time, Grace set the photograph down and picked up her phone. She dialed and waited. Her voice came through thick with tears she was trying to hide. "Hey, Danny, how are you feeling today?" A weak male voice answered, young, exhausted. "I'm okay, sis. Don't worry about me. How's your job?" "They treating you all right?" Grace's voice strengthened, drew on reserve she shouldn't have. "Everything's fine. Mrs. Castellano is wonderful, like a grandmother. I'm happy here." Victor's chest tightened. After everything she had endured today, she was lying to protect her brother from worry. "That's good," the voice said. "I hate that you work so hard. Should be me taking care of you." "Don't talk like that. Focus on getting better. I'm coming this weekend. We'll play cards." Weak laugh. "You always cheat." "I don't cheat. I just remember things. A pause. Grace. Yeah. I love you. You know that, right? Grace's voice cracked. I love you too, Danny. More than anything. They said goodbye. Grace sat alone in darkness. The smile she had worn during the call faded like a dying candle. Then she cried, this time harder. Her whole body shook. She pressed her face into her pillow to muffle the sound. Practiced at this. Done it many times. Cried where no one could hear. Victor felt burning in his eyes. The cold mafia boss who had ordered men killed without flinching was sitting in darkness, tears forming because a maid was crying. What broke you so badly, he thought. And how are you still full of light? He needed answers. Morning came gray and cold. Victor hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Vanessa slapping his mother, saw Grace kneeling on cold marble, saw the photograph of a little girl with stars in her eyes. His phone rang. Marcus. Got the background on Grace Williams. You're going to want to hear this. Victor was already sitting. Tell me. Marcus began reading, and each word landed like a blow. Grace Williams, born 27 years ago in the South Bronx, youngest of 3 children. Mother abandoned the family when Grace was 10, left nothing but a crumpled note, I can't do this anymore. Father couldn't cope, turned to alcohol, became violent when drunk. Grace learned to position herself between her father's fists and her siblings, took beatings so her brother Elijah and sister Lily wouldn't have to. Father died of liver failure when Grace was 15, no insurance, no savings. 3 children and a mountain of debt. Grace dropped out of school, worked 3 jobs, washing dishes, cleaning offices, delivering packages in neighborhoods where delivery drivers got robbed, anything that paid. She kept her brother and sister fed, kept them in school, kept them alive. Then Lily got sick. Victor closed his eyes. Leukemia. Diagnosed when Lily was 7. Grace ran everywhere, begged everyone, borrowed from anyone who would lend, worked until she collapsed. But hospital bills were mountains, and she was just a teenager with empty hands. Lily died in Grace's arms on a December night. She was 8 years old. Her last words, "Sister, don't cry. It doesn't hurt anymore." Victor's hands were shaking. "There's more," Marcus said. 5 years ago, Elijah was diagnosed with kidney failure, the same cruel pattern, the same impossible bills. Grace found the Castellano mansion job because the salary was higher than anywhere else. She sends 80% of every paycheck to the hospital. Without her money, Elijah would have been off the transplant list years ago. "I talked to staff," Marcus continued. "They all say the same thing. She never complains, never takes days off, treats Mrs. Castellano like family." Victor thought about what he had witnessed. Grace kneeling on cold marble, Grace reading poetry in a patient voice, Grace holding his mother's hand and promising to stay. "One more thing," Marcus said. "Elijah's condition is getting worse. Without a transplant in the next few months, he won't make it. The hospital bills are piling up faster than Grace can pay." Victor ended the call. He sat in silence for a long moment. Grace had lost everything. Mother, father, sister. Was fighting desperately to save her brother, had nothing and no one. And yet she still found room in her heart to love a sick old woman who could give her nothing in return. How was that possible, Victor didn't know. But he was going to make sure no one ever hurt Grace Williams again. The second day began with Vanessa checking on her handiwork. Victor watched through the cameras as she walked to Margaret's room, pushed open the door without knocking, and stared at the old woman propped against pillows. Margaret looked better than yesterday. Color in her cheeks, alertness in her eyes. Vanessa's expression darkened. She strode to the nightstand and opened the pill organizer, counted the tablets, realized the proper dosage had been taken. Someone had defied her. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes swept the room looking for evidence, looking for someone to blame. "Who gave you your medication?" Margaret said nothing. "I asked you a question, old woman, and I chose not to answer." Vanessa's hand twitched. Victor saw it. She wanted to strike again, but something held her back. Maybe the bruise already on Margaret's cheek. Maybe the fear of leaving marks that couldn't be explained. Instead, she leaned close and whispered, Enjoy your small victory. It won't last. She turned and walked out. Victor switched cameras, tracking her movement through the mansion. She went straight to the staff quarters. Grace was in the laundry room folding sheets. She looked up when Vanessa appeared in the doorway, and Victor saw her body go still. "You gave her the pills." Grace's voice came out steady. "She needs her medication." "I gave specific instructions." "Mrs. Castellano has Parkinson's. Missing doses can cause serious complications." Vanessa stepped closer. "You think I care about complications?" "I think you should." Something shifted in Vanessa's expression. Surprise, maybe. She wasn't used to servants who talked back. "What did you just say to me?" Grace set down the sheet she was folding, met Vanessa's eyes directly. "Mrs. Castellano is my responsibility. I won't let her suffer because of anyone's instructions, including yours." Victor leaned forward in his chair. The room was silent. Vanessa staring at Grace, Grace staring back. Two women, two worlds, neither willing to look away. Then Vanessa smiled. It was the coldest smile Victor had ever seen. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with." Vanessa's smile faltered, just for a moment, then it came back harder than before. Brave little Maid, standing up for the old woman. How touching. She stepped even closer, close enough that Grace had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "Let me tell you something about bravery. In 3 weeks, I'll be Mrs. Castellano. And when that happens, you'll be the first person I throw out of this house." Grace didn't flinch. "Then I'll care for her until that day." Vanessa's composure cracked. Her hand came up fast. The slap echoed through the laundry room. Grace's head snapped sideways. Blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Know your place." Victor's whole body went rigid. His hand found the door handle again. Every instinct screaming to burst out, to protect, to destroy. Marcus's voice came through his earpiece. "Not yet, boss. We need more evidence for a clean break. Legal protection." Victor's grip tightened until his knuckles went white. On the screen, Grace slowly turned her head back to face Vanessa. She didn't cry, didn't cower, didn't beg. She looked at the woman who had just struck her with eyes that held no fear. "I've been hit by people far more terrifying than you. It didn't break me then. It won't break me now." Vanessa stared at her. For the first time since Victor had started watching Vanessa Sterling, looked genuinely unsettled. "What did you say?" "You heard me." Vanessa took a step back. Involuntary. Like Grace's words had physical force. "You'll regret this." Her voice had lost its smoothness. "I'll destroy you. Everything you care about. Everyone you love." Grace's expression didn't change. "You can try." Vanessa turned and stormed out. Grace stood alone in the laundry room for a long moment. Then she lifted her hand to her split lip, looked at the blood on her fingers, and calmly returned to folding sheets. Victor stared at the screen. He had watched men face down death with less courage. Who was this woman? That night, Grace sat in her tiny room holding her phone. Victor watched through the camera as she dialed the hospital. "This is Grace Williams. I'm calling about my brother Elijah Williams, room 412. A pause. Grace's expression changed, fear flickering through. "What do you mean overdue? I sent the payment last week." Another pause. Her face went pale. "How much?" "No, I understand. I'll get it. Just please, please don't take him off the list." She ended the call and sat motionless. Then she opened her phone's calculator and started doing math. Victor could see her typing numbers, subtracting, dividing, trying to figure out how to make impossible money appear from nothing. Her shoulders began to shake. She pressed her hand over her mouth to keep any sound from escaping. Victor watched her cry in silence, and something in his chest cracked open. He picked up his phone and made a call. "I need to know the current balance on medical bills for a patient named Elijah Williams, room 412 Presbyterian Hospital." 15 minutes later, he had the number, $287,000. An impossible sum for a maid making $3,200 a month. Victor made another call. "Pay it. All of it. Anonymous donation. and make sure he stays at the top of the transplant list. Sir, just do it." He ended the call and looked back at the screen. Grace had stopped crying. She was staring at the photograph of her sister again, running her finger over the little girl's smiling face. "I won't lose him too, Lily," she whispered. "I promise, whatever it takes." Victor felt something shift inside him. For 17 years he had built walls around his heart, let no one in, trusted no one completely. Now, watching this woman make promises to a dead sister's photograph, he felt those walls beginning to crack. The third day brought the information Victor had been waiting for. Marcus appeared in the surveillance room just after midnight, holding a thick folder. "You were right, boss. We were looking at a mask." He spread documents across the table. "Vanessa Sterling doesn't exist." Victor looked up sharply. The real Vanessa Sterling was the adopted daughter of Charles and Elizabeth Sterling. Wealthy family, very private. She died in a car accident in France 5 years ago. Family kept it quiet. Grief, privacy. The usual reasons rich people hide things. Marcus pulled out a photograph. 2 women. Similar build, similar coloring, but different faces. 6 months after the real Vanessa died, this woman appeared in New York society claiming to be her. Said she'd been living in Europe studying traveling. The Sterlings are reclusive. Nobody questioned it. Who is she really? Vanessa Mitchell, born in a Chicago slum. Father was a professional con artist, taught her everything. Identity theft, document forgery, long cons. She's been doing this since she was 16. Victor studied the documents. Police reports, arrest records, a trail of victims stretching back over a decade. "She's worked her way up," Marcus continued. "Started with small-time marks, lonely businessmen, vulnerable widowers, but you're her biggest target yet. She's been planning this for years." Victor looked at the surveillance monitors. Vanessa was in her suite on the phone laughing at something. What about Derek? They've been partners for 3 years. He handles the financial side. She handles the seduction. They've hit at least 6 other targets that we can confirm. Total take is somewhere north of 20 million. Victor was quiet for a long moment. "Does she know we're watching?" "No, sir. She thinks you're in Sicily. She thinks she's won." Victor smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Good. Keep it that way. I want 2 more days of surveillance. Every conversation, every plan, every detail. And then she's going to learn what happens when you try to destroy a Castellano." The 4th day began with a threat that changed everything. Victor was reviewing overnight footage when Vanessa cornered Grace in the hallway outside Margaret's room. "I know you've been listening at doors." Grace's voice stayed calm. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't play stupid." Vanessa's eyes were cold. "I've done my research on you, Grace Williams. You have a brother, Elijah, kidney failure, waiting for a transplant." Grace went very still. "If you say one word to anyone about what you've seen or heard in this house, I'll make sure he never gets that transplant. I have connections, doctors, administrators. One phone call, and his name disappears from every list in the country." Victor watched Grace's face, saw the fear break through her careful mask. "Please," her voice cracked, "please leave my brother alone. Then keep your mouth shut. Understand?" Grace nodded, said nothing. Vanessa smiled with satisfaction and walked away. Grace stood alone in the hallway. Her whole body was trembling. Then she went into Margaret's room, and Victor watched her compose herself. Watched her smile at his mother, watched her pretend everything was fine while inside she must be breaking apart. That night, she sat in her tiny room and wrote a letter. Victor adjusted the camera, zoomed in on the paper. "Dear Miss Maggie, if anything happens to me, please know that you're the mother I never had. Caring for you isn't work. It's the greatest honor of my life. Please be strong. I love you. Grace." She folded the letter carefully and placed it in her drawer. Then she sat in darkness crying without sound. Victor made a decision. He picked up his phone. "Marcus, change of plans. We move tomorrow. I want everything ready. Sir, we were going to wait. Tomorrow. I'm not letting her suffer one more day. He ended the call and looked at the monitor. Grace had stopped crying. She was sitting very straight, her hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing, waiting for whatever came next, not knowing that everything was about to change. Victor spoke to the empty room. Hold on, Grace. Just one more day, and then I'm going to make everything right. On the monitor, as if she could somehow hear him, Grace lifted her head, and for just a moment, she smiled, a small smile, barely there. But Victor saw it, and something inside him, something that had been frozen for 17 years, began to thaw. The morning sun had barely risen when Victor stepped out of the surveillance room for the first time in 4 days. His muscles ached from sitting in the same chair for nearly 100 hours straight. His eyes burned from staring at monitors. His jaw was locked so tight he could feel the tension radiating down his neck. But his mind was clear, crystal clear. He had seen everything, heard everything, recorded everything. Now it was time to act. Marcus met him in the hallway outside the library holding a thick manila envelope. Everything's ready, boss. The documents, the recordings, the background files. It's airtight. Victor took the envelope without opening it. The dinner. Scheduled for tonight, 7 o'clock. I've informed the kitchen staff it's a celebration of your return from Sicily. And Derek Thompson. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Invitation delivered this morning. I told him you wanted to thank him personally for managing the finances while you were away. He can't refuse without looking suspicious. Victor nodded. What about security? 6 men positioned around the dining room, hidden. They'll move on your signal. Good. Victor started walking toward the main staircase, then stopped. One more thing. Grace Williams. Marcus's expression shifted slightly. What about her? I want her at dinner tonight, not serving, sitting at the table. Sir. She's been protecting my mother for 4 days while everyone else in this house either ignored the abuse or participated in it. She deserves to see justice served. Victor paused. And I want to watch Vanessa's face when she realizes the maid she's been tormenting is sitting at my right hand. Marcus nodded slowly. I'll make the arrangements. Victor climbed the stairs to his mother's room. He needed to see her face, needed to hold her hand, needed to tell her that everything was going to be all right. But when he reached her door, he heard voices inside. Grace's voice, soft and warm. Your son will be home soon, Miss Maggie. I can feel it. Margaret's voice tired but hopeful. Do you really think so, child? I know so, and when he comes back, everything will change. You'll see. Victor stood outside the door listening. Grace, I need to tell you something. Margaret's voice dropped. If anything happens to me, I want you to know that these past 2 years have been a gift. You've been more of a daughter to me than anyone I've ever known. Don't talk like that, Miss Maggie. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll take care of yourself. Stop sacrificing everything for everyone else. You deserve happiness too. Silence. Then Grace's voice thick with emotion. I promise, Miss Maggie. I promise. Victor pushed open the door. Both women looked up. Margaret's face transformed with joy. Grace's eyes went wide with surprise. Vincent? Margaret stretched out her arms. Victor crossed the room in 3 strides and gathered his mother into a gentle embrace. He could feel how thin she had become, how fragile. And he could see the fading bruise on her cheek, the mark Vanessa had left 4 days ago. His blood boiled, but he kept his voice steady. I'm home, Mom. I'm home. Margaret pulled back to look at his face. Her eyes were searching, knowing. She had always been able to read him better than anyone. You know, she whispered. Don't you? Victor nodded once. Tears spilled down Margaret's cheeks. I tried to tell you, son. I tried to warn you. I know. And I should have listened sooner. He kissed her forehead. But it ends tonight. All of it. Grace had risen from her chair and moved toward the door, trying to slip away quietly. Victor's voice stopped her. Grace. She froze her hand on the doorframe. Stay. She turned slowly, uncertainty written across her face. "Mr. Castellano, I should give you privacy with your mother. I have work to— You're not working today." Victor released his mother and faced Grace directly. "In fact, you're not working anymore. Not as a maid." Grace's brow furrowed with confusion. "Sir, I don't understand." Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "This is a receipt from Presbyterian Hospital. As of 6 o'clock this morning, all outstanding medical bills for Elijah Williams have been paid in full, all $287,000. The color drained from Grace's face. That can't be. How do you— Your brother has also been moved to the top of the transplant list. A matching donor has been identified. Surgery is scheduled for 2 weeks from today." Grace's legs gave out. She would have hit the floor if Victor hadn't caught her. He steadied her with both hands on her shoulders, holding her upright while she processed what he had just said. "Elijah," she whispered. "Elijah is going to live. Yes. But I never asked, how did you know?" Victor's eyes met hers, and in that moment he let his mask slip. Just for a second. Just enough for her to see the warmth underneath. "I know everything, Grace. I've been watching, and I've seen who you really are." Grace stared at him. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Margaret's voice broke the silence. "I told you, child, everything was going to change." Grace began to cry. Not the silent tears she had learned to shed in darkness. Real tears. Loud tears. The tears of someone whose impossible burden had suddenly been lifted. Victor guided her to a chair and let her weep. When she finally composed herself, she looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Why would you do this for me? I'm nobody. I'm just a maid." Victor crouched down so they were eye to eye. "You held my mother's hand when she was alone. You gathered pills from the floor when someone scattered them in cruelty. You took blows meant to break you and refused to break." His voice was quiet but fierce. "You're not nobody, Grace. You're the only person in this house who showed my mother genuine love when she needed it most." Grace's lower lip trembled. "I want you at dinner tonight," Victor continued. "Not serving, sitting at the table, as my guest." "I can't do that. Miss Vanessa, Vanessa won't do anything to you ever again. I promise you that." Something in his tone made Grace look at him more closely. She saw the steel in his eyes, the barely contained fury, and she understood. "You know what she did. I know everything she did, and tonight she's going to answer for all of it." Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I'll be there." The hours crawled by. Vanessa spent the afternoon in her suite, preparing for what she believed would be a triumphant dinner celebrating her fiancé's return. She had her hair styled, her makeup applied with professional precision, her most expensive dress laid out on the bed. Victor watched through the surveillance cameras as she practiced her smile in the mirror. The same smile she had worn for a year, the same mask she had used to deceive him. She had no idea the trap was already closed. At 5 o'clock, Derek Thompson arrived at the mansion. He was sweating through his designer shirt before he even reached the front door. Victor watched him glance around nervously, check his phone twice, wipe his palms on his pants. Guilty conscience. Marcus met Derek at the door and escorted him to the study for drinks before dinner. Small talk, business updates, nothing to raise suspicion. At 6 o'clock, Victor visited Grace's room. She was standing in front of the small mirror on her wardrobe, wearing the same simple uniform she always wore. She turned when she heard his knock, and her face fell. "I don't have anything else to wear. I shouldn't—" Victor held up a garment bag. "My mother's idea. She said it belonged to her daughter." He paused. "The daughter she lost before I was born." Grace took the bag with trembling hands, unzipped it. Inside was a deep blue dress, elegant but understated. Simple pearl buttons, a modest neckline. Something a real lady would wear. "I can't take this." "It's not a loan. It's a gift." Victor's voice softened. "My mother wants you to have it. She said her daughter would have wanted someone worthy to wear it." Grace's eyes filled with tears again. "Please stop making me cry," she said with a shaky laugh. "I've cried more in the past hour than I have in years." Then tonight I'll make someone else cry instead." Grace looked at him, saw the darkness beneath his words. "What are you going to do?" "Justice." At 7 o'clock sharp, the dinner began. The dining room had been arranged with 5 place settings, Victor at the head, Margaret in her wheelchair to his left, Grace to his right, Vanessa across from Grace, Derek at the far end looking like a man facing a firing squad. Vanessa entered last, wearing a red dress that cost more than Grace had made in a year. Her eyes swept the room and locked onto Grace. Her smile flickered. "Vincent, darling, why is the maid sitting at our table?" Victor rose and pulled out Grace's chair with deliberate courtesy. "Grace isn't a maid anymore. She's family, and I wanted her here to celebrate my return." Vanessa's smile hardened but held. "How generous of you." She took her seat, shooting a glare at Grace that promised retribution. Grace met her eyes without flinching. The first course was served. Soup, silver spoons clicking against porcelain. Polite conversation about Victor's fictional trip to Sicily. Vanessa played her role perfectly. Attentive, adoring, asking about his meetings, his travels, whether he had missed her. "Every moment," Victor said. "Being away from you was torture." Vanessa beamed. Derek remained silent, pushing food around his plate without eating. Sweat had broken out on his forehead despite the cool air. The second course came and went. Salad, more small talk. Then Victor set down his fork. "I have a surprise for everyone tonight." Vanessa's eyes lit up. "A surprise? What kind of surprise? A revelation?" Victor stood slowly. "I've learned some interesting things during my trip. Things I think everyone at this table needs to hear." Derek's fork clattered against his plate. Vanessa's smile stayed frozen in place, but Victor saw uncertainty flicker in her eyes. "What kind of things, darling?" Victor picked up a remote from beside his plate. "Why don't I show you?" He pressed a button, and the large screen mounted on the wall flickered to life. The first image appeared. Vanessa and Derek wrapped around each other in the main hall, kissing, groping, betraying. Vanessa's face went white. Derek made a choking sound. "That was taken 4 days ago," Victor said, his voice conversational. "In the exact spot where I proposed to you, Vanessa, or should I say, Vanessa Mitchell." The name landed like a bomb. Vanessa lurched to her feet. "That's not, you can't, how did you—" Victor pressed another button. The video changed. Vanessa screaming at Margaret, calling her a burden, knocking pills to the floor. "You think you matter, old woman. The sooner you die, the better for everyone." The slap, the red mark blooming on a 70-year-old cheek. Margaret closed her eyes. Grace reached over and took her hand. Vanessa was shaking now. Her perfect mask had shattered completely. "Victor, please let me explain." "Explain what?" Victor's voice finally showed its edge. Cold. Deadly. "Explain how you planned to have my mother declared incompetent. Explain how you were going to lock her in a nursing home. Explain this." Another button, another video. Vanessa on the sofa with Derek laying out their plan. "We wait until I'm in the will, until I have access to everything. And then accidents happen. A car crash, bad medication, a fall." Derek's whimper. "You're talking about murder." Vanessa's recorded laugh. "I'm talking about our future." The room was silent. Vanessa stood frozen, her chest heaving, her eyes wild. Then she bolted for the door. She didn't make it 3 steps before 2 of Marcus's men materialized from the shadows and grabbed her arms. "Let me go. Let me go, you animals." Derek tried to run too. 2 more men blocked his path and pinned him to the ground. Victor walked slowly toward Vanessa. Each footstep echoed in the silent room. "Do you know what I do to people who betray my family?" Vanessa struggled against the men holding her. "Please, Victor, I love you. I really love you. Everything I did was because I love you." "Love?" Victor laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You don't know what that word means." He turned to look at Grace. "She knows what love means. She loved my mother when she had nothing to gain. She protected her when no one else would. She knelt on cold marble to gather pills while you stood there and laughed." Victor faced Vanessa again. You wanted to destroy the only person who ever truly loved me. You wanted to steal everything I built with my own hands. You wanted me dead." He leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper that everyone in the room could still hear. "I should kill you. I've killed men for less. Much less." Vanessa sobbed. "Please, please don't." "But I'm not going to kill you." She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. Victor smiled, the smile of a wolf. "Death is too easy. Instead, I'm going to take everything. Your stolen identity, your stolen money, your freedom. I'm going to expose every con you've ever run, every person you've ever destroyed. And when I'm done, there won't be a single place on this earth where you can hide." He stepped back. "Take them away." Marcus's men dragged Vanessa and Derek toward the door. Vanessa screamed. Derek sobbed. The sounds echoed down the hallway until finally fading into silence. The dining room was still. Victor turned to face his mother and Grace. Margaret had tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. "My son, my brave, clever son." Victor knelt beside her wheelchair and took her hand. "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have seen it sooner. I should have protected you better." "You protected me perfectly. You just needed time to see the truth." Margaret's eyes moved to Grace. "And you had help." Victor stood and faced Grace. She was still sitting in her chair, hands folded in her lap, the blue dress catching the light. Her eyes were wide, processing everything that had just happened. "Grace." She looked up at him. "Thank you." His voice was rough with emotion. "For everything." Grace shook her head slowly. "I didn't do anything special. I just did what anyone should do." "That's exactly what made it special." Victor held out his hand. "No one else in this house did what you did. No one else cared enough." Grace stared at his outstretched hand. Then slowly she reached out and took it. Victor helped her to her feet, and for a long moment they stood there face to face. Two people who had both known betrayal, both known loss, both built walls around their hearts. But somehow in the middle of all that darkness, they had found each other. Margaret watched them with knowing eyes. Outside the window, the last light of day faded into night, and somewhere in the basement of the Castellano mansion, Vanessa Mitchell's screams had finally gone silent. 3 days had passed since Vanessa's world collapsed in the dining room. Grace stood at the window of her new bedroom on the second floor, watching the morning light spread across the garden below. The room was 10 times larger than the cramped basement quarters she had lived in for 2 years. A real bed with soft sheets, a private bathroom with hot water that never ran cold, windows that let in actual sunlight. She still couldn't believe any of it was real. A knock at the door made her turn. "Come in." Margaret wheeled herself through the doorway, her face bright with a smile that seemed to grow stronger every day since Vanessa's removal. "Good morning, child. Did you sleep well?" Grace shook her head honestly. "I kept waking up thinking I was back in the basement, thinking all of this was a dream." Margaret rolled closer and took Grace's hand. "It's not a dream. This is your home now. Our home." Grace felt tears threatening again. She had cried more in the past 3 days than in the previous 10 years combined. It was as if all the grief and fear and exhaustion she had been holding back for so long had finally found permission to escape. "Miss Maggie, I still don't understand why he did all this. The hospital bills, the room, everything. Don't you dare say you're just a maid." Margaret's voice sharpened with affection. "You're family. You've been family since the day you knelt on that cold floor and gathered my pills one by one, while that woman laughed." He saw that. He saw everything. 4 days of watching. 4 days of learning who people really are when they think no one is looking. Margaret squeezed her hand. "You showed him something he had forgotten existed, Grace. Kindness without expectation. Love without condition." Grace was quiet for a long moment. What's going to happen to her, to Vanessa? Margaret's expression hardened. "My son has contacts in every agency that matters. By now, her real identity has been exposed to every law enforcement database in the country. Every victim she ever conned is being contacted. Every crime she ever committed is being documented. Will she go to prison? If she's lucky. Margaret's smile held no warmth. In our world, prison is often the kindest option. A second knock interrupted them, heavier this time, more deliberate. Victor stood in the doorway. Grace's heart did something strange when she saw him, a flutter she didn't quite understand and wasn't ready to examine. He had changed since that night in the dining room. The cold mask he wore as a mafia boss seemed softer when he looked at his mother. And when he looked at Grace, something in his eyes shifted in ways she couldn't read. "Mom, the doctor is here for your checkup." Margaret sighed dramatically. Another checkup, another lecture about taking my medication on time. You missed 2 doses last month. I was being abused by a psychopath. I think that's a reasonable excuse. Victor's jaw tightened at the mention of the abuse, but he kept his voice light. Go. Let him poke and prod. I need to speak with Grace anyway. Margaret looked between them with knowing eyes. Don't scare her, Vincent. She's had enough scares to last a lifetime. I don't scare easily, Grace said quietly. Margaret laughed and wheeled herself out of the room. The door closed, leaving Victor and Grace alone. He stood near the entrance, keeping distance between them, as if he sensed she needed space. His hands were in his pockets. His posture was carefully relaxed. But Grace could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. How are you settling in? The room is beautiful. Too beautiful, probably. I keep expecting someone to tell me there's been a mistake. There's no mistake. Victor took a step closer. This is where you belong. Grace wrapped her arms around herself. Mr. Castellano. Victor. What? My name is Victor. You're not a servant anymore, Grace. You don't have to call me Mr. Castellano. She hesitated. The word felt strange on her tongue. Too intimate, too real. Victor? She tested it carefully. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why me? You could have just paid the hospital bills anonymously. You could have given me a bonus and let me keep working as a maid. Why all of this? The room, the clothes, the seat at your table. Victor was quiet for a long moment. Do you know how many people I've trusted in my life? Truly trusted. Grace shook her head. 2. My mother and Marcus. He paused. Everyone else has either betrayed me or disappointed me. Everyone else wanted something from me. Power, money, protection. I learned early that in my world, trust is a currency that gets you killed. That sounds lonely. It is. Victor's voice dropped. For 17 years, I've been surrounded by people and completely alone. I built walls so high that no one could climb them. And then I watched you through those cameras. Grace felt heat rise to her cheeks. I watched you gather pills from the floor. I watched you hold my mother's hand and call her family. I watched you cry alone in your room over a photograph of your sister, then wake up the next morning and smile like nothing was wrong. Victor stepped closer, and I realized something. What? My walls weren't keeping me safe. They were keeping me dead. Grace's breath caught. You showed me what real strength looks like, Grace. Not the strength of men with guns and money, the strength of someone who has lost everything and still chooses to love, still chooses to protect, still chooses to hope. Tears spilled down Grace's cheeks. She didn't try to wipe them away. I'm not strong, she whispered. I'm terrified, all the time. I'm terrified of losing Elijah, terrified of ending up alone, terrified that one day I'll wake up and all of this will be gone. Victor closed the remaining distance between them. He reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. I can't promise you the world will stop being scary, but I can promise that you won't face it alone anymore, not ever again. Grace looked into his eyes. She had spent her whole life being invisible. The girl who took beatings so her siblings wouldn't have to. The teenager who dropped out of school to wash dishes. The maid who cleaned rooms and served meals and disappeared into the background. No one had ever looked at her the way Victor was looking at her now. Like she mattered. Like she was precious. Like she was someone worth protecting. I don't know how to be anything other than what I've always been, she admitted. Then we'll figure it out together. His phone buzzed, breaking the moment. Victor glanced at the screen and his expression changed. The softness disappeared, replaced by something cold and alert. "What is it?" Grace asked. "Marcus, there's a problem." He turned and strode toward the door, then stopped and looked back. "Stay in the house. Don't leave for any reason. I'll explain everything when I get back." Before Grace could respond, he was gone. The problem was bigger than Victor had anticipated. Marcus met him in the study holding a tablet with surveillance footage playing on loop. "Vanessa's father," Marcus said grimly. "Thomas Mitchell. He arrived in New York this morning." Victor watched the footage. A man in his 60s, hard-faced and lean, walking through JFK Airport with the confident stride of someone who had spent a lifetime outrunning the law. "I thought he was in prison." "Released 6 months ago. Good behavior." Marcus's tone suggested he didn't believe that for a second. "He's been keeping a low profile until now, but word of his daughter's situation must have reached him." "What do we know about him?" "Professional con artist. Taught Vanessa everything she knows, served time for fraud, identity theft, and extortion. But there are rumors of worse, much worse." "What kind of worse?" "The kind that never makes it to court because witnesses have a habit of disappearing." Victor's jaw tightened. "Where is he now?" "Unknown. He checked into a hotel in Manhattan under a fake name, then vanished. Our people are searching, but he's good at not being found." "What does he want?" "Revenge, most likely. His daughter was his masterpiece, his retirement plan. You didn't just expose Vanessa Boss, you destroyed everything he spent 30 years building." Victor turned away from the screen and walked to the window. Thomas Mitchell, a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain from making the Castellanos suffer. "Double security on the house. I want eyes on my mother and Grace at all times. No one in or out without my explicit approval." "Already done. But boss, there's something else." Victor turned back. Marcus hesitated, which was unusual. Marcus never hesitated. "The hospital, Presbyterian. Someone made a call this morning asking about Elijah Williams. Wanted to know his room number, his condition, his surgery schedule." Victor felt ice form in his stomach. "They used a fake name, said they were family. The hospital didn't give out any information, but they flagged it as suspicious and called us. He's going after Grace's brother. It's possible. If he can't get to you directly, he might try to use leverage, threaten someone you care about." Someone you care about? Victor thought of Grace standing at her window, finally allowing herself to hope. Thought of the way her face had lit up when he told her Elijah was going to live. Thomas Mitchell wanted to destroy that hope, wanted to use an innocent man's life as a weapon. "Get Elijah moved, tonight. I want him in a private facility with round-the-clock security. Nothing connected to my name, nothing that can be traced." "Already in progress. But Boss Grace should know. If her brother is in danger, she has a right to—" "I'll tell her myself." Victor headed for the door. "One more thing," Marcus called after him. Victor stopped. "Thomas Mitchell has killed before. Not personally, but he has people who do the dirty work. If he decides Grace is the best way to hurt you, he won't hesitate." Victor's hands clenched into fists. "Then he'll learn what I've learned, that some people aren't worth protecting and some people are worth dying for." He found Grace in his mother's room reading poetry aloud, the same way she had done for years. Her voice was soft and musical, filling the space with warmth. Margaret's eyes were closed, a peaceful smile on her face. For a moment, Victor just watched them, two women who had become the center of his world, the mother who had raised him through darkness, the stranger who had shown him light. Grace looked up and saw him standing in the doorway. Her smile faded when she read his expression. "What's wrong? We need to talk." Margaret's eyes opened. "Vincent, what happened?" Victor entered the room and closed the door behind him. "Vanessa's father is in New York." Grace's face went pale. "His name is Thomas Mitchell. He's dangerous, more dangerous than Vanessa, and I have reason to believe he might try to use people close to me as leverage." "People like who?" Grace's voice trembled. Victor met her eyes. "People like Elijah." Grace shot to her feet. "What? No. No, you said he was safe. You said the surgery was scheduled. You said, he's being moved tonight to a private facility with maximum security. I have people watching him around the clock. No one will touch him. But how did this man even know about Elijah? How did he? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out, and I'm going to stop him. Grace was shaking. All the peace she had found in the past 3 days was crumbling before Victor's eyes. I should go to him. I should be with Elijah. He must be so scared. You can't! Victor caught her arms as she moved toward the door. Grace, listen to me. If you leave this house, you become a target. Thomas Mitchell knows who you are. He knows what you mean to me. If he gets his hands on you, he'll use you to destroy everything. What I mean to you? Grace stared at him. Victor, I don't understand any of this. A week ago, I was a maid cleaning bathrooms. Now I'm being hunted by a criminal because of what I mean to you. What do I mean to you? The question hung in the air. Margaret watched in silence, her eyes moving between her son and the young woman he couldn't seem to let go of. Victor released Grace's arms but didn't step back. You mean more than you should, more than I intended, more than I know how to explain. His voice was rough, stripped of the careful control he usually maintained. When I watched Vanessa hit you, I wanted to kill her with my bare hands. When I watched you cry alone in your room, I felt something I hadn't felt in 17 years. And when I think about someone hurting you, about someone using you as a weapon against me, I can't breathe. Grace's eyes widened. I know this is too much too fast. I know you didn't ask for any of this. But I need you to trust me, Grace. Trust that I will keep you safe. Trust that I will keep Elijah safe. Trust that when this is over, you will have the life you deserve. Tears streamed down Grace's face. I've trusted people before. My mother said she loved me before she abandoned me. My father said he'd protect me before he started hitting me. How do I know you won't? Because I'm not them. Victor took her face in his hands, tilting it up so she had to look at him. I'm not your mother who ran when things got hard. I'm not your father who turned his pain into violence. I'm a man who has done terrible things to terrible people, but I have never broken a promise to someone I care about. And I'm promising you now, Grace Williams, that no one will hurt you or your brother while I'm still breathing. Grace closed her eyes. The tears kept falling, but slowly her hands came up to rest on his chest over his heart. I trust you, she whispered. God help me, I trust you. Victor pulled her into his arms and held her while she cried. Margaret watched from her wheelchair, tears of her own sliding down her wrinkled cheeks. She had prayed for years that her son would find someone worthy of his heart, someone who could see past the mafia boss to the wounded boy underneath, someone who could love him not for his power, but for his pain. She had finally gotten her prayer answered. Now she just had to hope they would all survive long enough to see it through. That night, Victor sat alone in his study, reviewing every piece of information Marcus had gathered on Thomas Mitchell. The man was a ghost. Decades of criminal activity with almost no convictions, witnesses who recanted, evidence that disappeared, prosecutors who suddenly dropped charges. He had connections in places that made even Victor uncomfortable. People who dealt in weapons, drugs, and human trafficking. People who would do anything for the right price. And now all of that was pointed at the Castellano family. Victor's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Castellano. The voice was older, smooth, educated. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Thomas Mitchell. Ah, so you know who I am. Good. That saves time. A pause. I want my daughter back. Your daughter is facing charges in 7 states. She's not mine to give. Then perhaps we should discuss what else you might be willing to give. To ensure the safety of certain people you care about. Victor's blood went cold. If you touch anyone under my protection. Relax, Mr. Castellano. I'm not an animal. I'm a businessman. And I'm proposing a simple transaction. Mitchell's voice remained pleasant, almost friendly. You have money. I want money. $2 million transferred to an account I'll specify, and I disappear. Your mother stays safe. Your little maid stays safe. Her brother gets his surgery without any unexpected complications. And if I refuse, then things get complicated. For everyone. Victor was silent. You have 24 hours to decide. I'll be in touch. The line went dead. Victor stared at his phone. $2 million was nothing. He could pay it without blinking. But men like Thomas Mitchell never stopped at one payment, and men like Victor Castellano never negotiated with threats. He picked up his phone and called Marcus. "Find him. I don't care what it takes. Find him before sunrise." Marcus called at 4:47 in the morning. Victor hadn't slept. He had spent the night reviewing Thomas Mitchell's file, memorizing every known associate, every safe house, every pattern of behavior. Somewhere in those pages was the key to finding a man who had spent 30 years learning how to disappear. "We found him." Victor sat up straight. Warehouse District in Brooklyn. One of our informants spotted him meeting with 2 men about an hour ago. He's still there." "How many people does he have?" "At least 4 that we can see, probably more inside." Victor was already on his feet, reaching for his jacket. "I want 12 men ready in 15 minutes. Tell them to bring everything." "Boss, are you sure you want to do this personally? We can handle—" "This man threatened my mother. He threatened Grace. He threatened her brother." Victor's voice was ice. "I'm handling this myself." He hung up and moved toward the door, then stopped. Grace was standing in the hallway wrapped in a robe, her eyes heavy with exhaustion but alert with worry. "I heard you talking. What's happening?" Victor hesitated. Every instinct told him to keep her in the dark to protect her from the ugliness of what he was about to do. But he remembered what he had promised her. No more secrets, no more walls. "We found Thomas Mitchell." Grace's face went pale. "What are you going to do?" "What I have to do." "Victor." "Grace." He crossed to her and took her hands. They were trembling. "I need you to stay here. Stay with my mother. Keep her calm. Can you do that for me? What if something happens to you?" "Nothing is going to happen to me." "You don't know that." Her voice cracked. "You don't know what he's capable of. You don't—" Victor silenced her by pressing his forehead against hers. "I've survived 17 years in this world. I've buried friends and enemies alike. I've looked death in the face more times than I can count." And he pulled back to look into her eyes. "But I've never had something worth living for until now. Trust me when I say I have no intention of dying tonight." Grace's lower lip trembled. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Promise me you'll come back." "I promise." He kissed her forehead, then turned and walked away before he could change his mind. The warehouse sat at the end of a dead-end street, surrounded by abandoned buildings and rusted shipping containers. At 5:23 a.m., the only light came from a single bare bulb hanging over a side entrance. Victor sat in the back of an armored SUV, watching the building through binoculars, while Marcus briefed the team. 4 confirmed hostiles outside, unknown number inside. Mitchell is on the 2nd floor northeast corner. Our informant says he's been making calls all night, probably arranging exit routes. Exits. 3 that we know of. Front door side entrance and a loading dock on the south side. We'll have men covering all of them. Victor lowered the binoculars. "I want Mitchell alive. Everyone else is expendable." Marcus nodded and relayed the order through his earpiece. At 5:31 a.m., the assault began. Victor's men moved like shadows, taking out the perimeter guards before they could raise an alarm. 2 down at the front, 1 at the side entrance, 1 at the loading dock. Victor entered through the front, flanked by Marcus and 4 others. The ground floor was empty, except for scattered debris and the smell of rust and decay. Voices echoed from somewhere above, muffled but audible. They climbed the stairs silently, weapons drawn. The 2nd floor opened into a large open space that had once been a manufacturing facility. In the far corner, Thomas Mitchell sat behind a makeshift desk made of wooden crates, a laptop open in front of him, a phone pressed to his ear. 2 armed men stood on either side of him. Mitchell looked up when Victor's team emerged from the stairwell. His expression didn't change. No surprise, no fear, just cold calculation. "Mr. Castellano, I was wondering when you'd show up." "Hang up the phone." Mitchell smiled and said something into the receiver before ending the call. "You're earlier than I expected. I assumed you'd spend at least a few hours debating whether to pay my price." "I don't negotiate with threats." "No, I suppose you don't. That's what makes you interesting." Mitchell leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed, despite the guns pointed at him. But I wonder if you thought this through. Kill me and you become the target of every contact I have. I've spent 30 years building a network that spans 3 continents. Do you really want to inherit those enemies? I've handled worse. Have you? Mitchell's smile widened. Because I've done my research on you, Victor. I know about the war you fought with the Colombians 5 years ago. I know about the deal you made with the Russians that cost you your best friend. I know about the woman you loved before Vanessa, the one who died because you couldn't protect her. Victor's jaw tightened. Marcus shifted uncomfortably beside him. Ah, that one struck a nerve, didn't it? Mitchell's eyes glittered with amusement. Sophia wasn't it beautiful, girl? Terrible what happened to her. Terrible that you couldn't save her even with all your money and all your power. Don't say her name. Why not? She's been dead for 8 years. Does it still hurt that much? Mitchell leaned forward. Here's what I find fascinating, Victor. You've been alone all this time, building your empire, protecting your mother, never letting anyone close again. And then this little maid comes along and suddenly you're paying hospital bills and giving her rooms in your mansion and threatening men like me to keep her safe. This isn't about her. Of course it is. Everything you've done in the past week has been about her. Mitchell shook his head slowly. You should have learned your lesson with Sophia. People like us, Victor, we don't get to have love. We don't get to have normal. The moment we care about someone, they become a weakness, a target, a weapon for our enemies to use. Like you tried to use Elijah. I was making a point. The boy was never in real danger. I just wanted you to understand the stakes. Mitchell stood slowly, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender that fooled no one. But here's the thing about stakes. They can always get higher. His right hand moved slightly, pressing something concealed against his palm. A phone, a button, a trigger. Victor's blood went cold. What did you do? Mitchell's smile turned predatory. I told you I've been making calls all night. One of those calls was to a man who specializes in chemistry. The kind of chemistry that makes people very sick very quickly. What are you talking about? Your mother's medication, the pills that lovely little maid has been giving her so faithfully every morning. Mitchell's voice dropped to a whisper. They're not her medication anymore. They haven't been for 2 days. Victor felt the ground shift beneath his feet. You're lying. Call your house. Ask your mother how she's feeling. Ask her if she's noticed anything strange. Dizziness, perhaps. Nausea, confusion. Mitchell's eyes never left Victor's face. The poison works slowly at first, but without the antidote, she'll be dead within 48 hours. Victor's gun came up aimed directly at Mitchell's head. Give me the antidote. It's not here. It's somewhere safe, somewhere only I know about. Mitchell spread his hands. Kill me, and your mother dies. It's that simple. The room was silent, except for the sound of Victor's ragged breathing. 17 years of control, 17 years of never letting enemies see weakness. And now this man had found the one thing that could break him. What do you want? What I originally asked for, $2 million, my daughter released from custody, and safe passage out of the country for both of us. I can't get Vanessa released. She's facing federal charges. Then you'd better find someone who can. You have 36 hours, Victor. After that, even the antidote won't help. Victor's finger tightened on the trigger. Every instinct screamed at him to shoot, to end this man who had threatened everything he loved. But his mother's face flashed before his eyes. Margaret, who had sacrificed everything for him. Margaret, who had finally started to smile again. Margaret, who might already be dying because he had brought Vanessa Sterling into their home. He lowered the gun. If my mother dies, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth. I will kill everyone you've ever loved. I will burn everything you've ever built. And when I finally find you, I will make you beg for death for months before I grant it. Mitchell's smile faltered for just a moment. 36 hours, Victor. The clock is ticking. Victor turned and walked out of the warehouse. His hands were shaking. He made it to the SUV before he called the house. Grace answered on the first ring. Victor. What happened? Are you okay? Where's my mother? She's in her room. She said she wasn't feeling well, so I helped her back to bed. Victor, what's going on? Not feeling well. The words hit him like a fist to the stomach. Don't give her any more medication. Whatever pills she's been taking, stop immediately. What, why? They've been tampered with. I'll explain everything when I get home. Just keep her comfortable and don't let her take anything until I get there. Victor, you're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. I'm on my way. He hung up and turned to Marcus. I need every doctor we have access to at the house within the hour. I need someone who specializes in toxicology. And I need someone to find out exactly what Mitchell put in those pills. Marcus was already dialing. Victor stared out the window at the lightening sky. 36 hours. 36 hours to find an antidote, to save his mother, to neutralize a threat that seemed to grow more dangerous by the minute. He thought of Grace's face when he left, the fear in her eyes, the way she had begged him to come back. He had promised he would. Now he had to keep that promise. The doctors arrived at 7:15 a.m. Victor watched through the doorway as they examined his mother, taking blood samples, checking vital signs, asking questions about symptoms that had seemed minor until now. Grace stood beside the bed, holding Margaret's hand, her face tight with worry. Margaret looked fragile in a way Victor had never seen before. The color had drained from her cheeks. Her hands trembled more than usual, and her eyes, usually so sharp and alert, seemed clouded with confusion. How long has she been like this? The lead doctor asked. She started feeling tired 2 days ago, Grace said. I thought it was just the stress of everything that happened. She's been through so much. What about nausea, dizziness? She mentioned feeling dizzy yesterday afternoon, and she didn't eat much at dinner. Grace's voice broke. I should have noticed. I should have realized something was wrong. This isn't your fault, Victor said from the doorway. Everyone turned to look at him. You couldn't have known the medication was tampered with. No one could have known. He crossed to his mother's bedside and took her other hand. Mom, can you hear me? Margaret's eyes focused on his face. Vincent, you're home. I'm home, and I'm going to fix this. I promise. Fix what, dear? I'm just tired. These doctors are making such a fuss over nothing. Victor looked at the lead doctor, who gave a small shake of his head. Mrs. Castellano, we need to run some tests. It might take a few hours, but we'll know more soon. Tests? Margaret sighed. Always tests. Can't an old woman be tired without everyone assuming she's dying? Grace squeezed her hand. Let them do their jobs, Miss Maggie. The sooner they finish, the sooner you can rest. Margaret looked at Grace with sudden clarity. You've been crying. What's wrong, child? Grace forced a smile. Nothing's wrong. I'm just worried about you. Don't lie to me. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. Margaret's gaze moved between Grace and Victor. Something happened. Something bad. Tell me. Victor hesitated. Then he sat on the edge of his mother's bed and told her everything. The phone call from Mitchell, the poisoned medication, the 36-hour deadline. When he finished, Margaret was silent for a long moment. Then she laughed. It was a weak laugh, raspy and thin, but a laugh nonetheless. That man thinks he can scare us after everything this family has survived. She reached up and touched Victor's face. My son, I have lived 70 years. I have buried a husband, lost babies, watched friends die. I am not afraid of some 2-bit con artist and his chemistry set. Mom, listen to me. Her voice strengthened with determination. Don't give him what he wants. Don't release that woman. Don't pay him a single dollar. If I don't, you'll die. Then I die. Margaret's eyes blazed with the fire that had sustained her through decades of hardship. But I will not let my son become a hostage to criminals. I will not let that monster win because he threatened an old woman who was ready to meet her maker anyway. I'm not ready to let you go. And I'm not ready to watch my son destroy everything he's built because of me. Margaret gripped his hand with surprising strength. Find another way, Vincent. You've always found another way. Don't stop now. Victor felt tears burning in his eyes. He hadn't cried in 17 years, not since Sophia, not since he'd learned that tears were a weakness he couldn't afford. But looking at his mother's face, seeing the love and the fear and the fierce determination, he felt something crack open inside him. I'll find the antidote, he said, his voice rough. "I'll find it without giving him anything." "I know you will." Margaret smiled. "You're my son. You can do anything." Grace stood silently by the window, tears streaming down her face. She had known Margaret for 2 years, had come to love her like the mother she never had, and now she was watching that love slip away, poisoned by a man who used people's lives as bargaining chips. Victor stood and crossed to her. "I need your help." Grace wiped her eyes. "Anything." Mitchell got to the medication somehow. "Either someone in this house is working for him, or he found a way in that we don't know about." Victor's voice dropped. "You know the staff better than anyone. You know their routines, their habits, their secrets. I need you to think. Who might have access to my mother's pills? Who might have been acting strange lately?" Grace frowned, forcing her mind to focus despite the fear. "The pills are delivered from the pharmacy every week. I'm usually the one who picks them up and organizes them. But there was one day, maybe 4 days ago, when I was sick. Migraine. I could barely get out of bed. Who handled the delivery that day? Rosa, one of the kitchen staff. She offered to help." Grace's eyes widened. "But Rosa has worked here for years. She loves Miss Maggie. She would never—" "Where is Rosa now?" Grace's face went pale. "I haven't seen her since yesterday morning. I assumed she had the day off." Victor pulled out his phone and called Marcus. "Rosa Martinez, kitchen staff." "Kitchen. Find her. Now." Within an hour, Marcus had the answer. Rosa Martinez had been found in a motel room in Queens, dead, overdose. The police were calling it suicide, but the timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Mitchell was cleaning up loose ends. Victor stood in his study staring at the report Marcus had brought. She was the connection. Mitchell must have paid her to swap the pills. Then he killed her to make sure she couldn't talk. "That means he planned this from the beginning," Marcus said. "He knew we'd find him eventually. He knew we'd come for him. The poison was his insurance policy." "Then we need to find another way to get the antidote." Victor's mind raced. He said only he knows where it is, but he's been making calls, coordinating with people. There has to be someone else who knows. His network is massive. It could be anyone. "Then we start with the people closest to him." Victor looked up. "His daughter, Vanessa." Marcus frowned. "She's in federal custody. Getting access to her won't be easy." "Nothing about this has been easy." Victor grabbed his jacket. "But if anyone knows her father's secrets, it's her. And right now, she's the only leverage we have." The federal detention center was cold and gray. Victor sat in a sterile interrogation room waiting. After 30 minutes, the door opened, and Vanessa Mitchell was escorted in. She looked nothing like the polished socialite who had shared his bed for a year. Her hair was lank and unwashed, her face was bare of makeup, her prison jumpsuit hung loose on her frame. But her eyes were the same, cold, calculating, watching him like a predator even behind bars. "Victor, what a pleasant surprise. Sit down." She settled into the chair across from him, chains clinking. "To what do I owe this visit? Come to gloat, come to see the mighty Vanessa Sterling reduced to this, 'Your father poisoned my mother.'" Vanessa's expression didn't change. "He wants me to pay him $2 million and get you released. In exchange, he'll give me the antidote." Still no reaction. "My mother will die in 30 hours if I don't find that antidote, and I'm not letting your father win." Victor leaned forward. "So here's my offer. Tell me where he keeps his insurance policies, his backup plans, his hidden stashes. Tell me everything you know about how his mind works. And in exchange, I'll make sure your sentence is reduced. I'll make sure you're sent to a minimum security facility. I'll make sure you have a chance at a life when you get out." Vanessa studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled. "You know what I find funny, Victor? You spent a year sleeping next to me, and you never once suspected what I really was. You were so desperate to believe someone loved you that you ignored every warning sign. This isn't about us. Everything is about us, about what we want, about what we're willing to do to get it." Vanessa leaned forward, mirroring his posture. "My father taught me that. He taught me that love is weakness, that trust is stupidity, that the only person you can rely on is yourself. He also taught you to be a criminal and a murderer. He taught me to survive." Vanessa's voice hardened. "Do you know what it's like to grow up with nothing, to watch your mother die because you couldn't afford medicine, to steal food just to stay alive?" Victor was silent. "No, you don't. You were born into power. You inherited an empire. You have no idea what it takes to claw your way up from the bottom." "I know what it takes to lose everything you love." Victor's voice was quiet. "I know what it takes to watch someone die and be powerless to stop it. And I know that none of that justifies what you and your father have done." Vanessa stared at him. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Something almost human. Then it was gone. "The antidote is in a safe deposit box. First National Bank Manhattan branch, box 1847. The key is hidden in my father's hotel room behind the bathroom mirror." Victor froze. "You're just going to tell me?" "I'm telling you because it won't matter." Vanessa's smile returned colder than before. "My father has cameras everywhere. The moment you access that box, he'll know, and he'll make sure you never leave the bank alive. Let me worry about that." "Oh, I will." Vanessa stood, chains rattling. "But Victor, one more thing." He waited. "That maid you're so protective of, Grace." Vanessa's voice dropped to a whisper. "My father doesn't forget, and he doesn't forgive. Even if you save your mother, he'll come for her eventually. He'll make her suffer just to watch you break." Victor stood slowly. "If he touches her, I'll kill him." "You can try." Vanessa laughed as the guards led her away. "But my father has been surviving people like you for 30 years. What makes you think you'll be any different?" The door closed behind her. Victor stood alone in the interrogation room, his hands clenched into fists. 29 hours left. And now he knew exactly where to find the antidote. The question was whether he could get to it before Thomas Mitchell stopped him. Victor stood outside the First National Bank at 6:47 a.m. with 22 hours left on the clock. Marcus had positioned men at every exit, snipers on adjacent rooftops, a surveillance team monitoring every camera within a 3-block radius. If Thomas Mitchell had people watching, Victor's people were watching them. But Vanessa's warning echoed in his mind. The moment you access that box, he'll know. Victor pulled out his phone and called the house. Grace answered immediately. "Victor, where are you?" "I found the antidote. I'm about to retrieve it." "Thank God." Her voice broke with relief. "Miss Maggie's getting worse. The doctors say her blood pressure keeps dropping. She's sleeping more than she's awake." Victor's chest tightened. "I'll be home within 2 hours. Keep her comfortable. Keep her fighting." "She is fighting. She keeps saying she won't let that man win." Grace paused. "Victor, please be careful. I have a bad feeling about this." "I'm always careful." "That's not what Marcus says." Despite everything, Victor almost smiled. "Marcus talks too much. I'll see you soon." He hung up and turned to Marcus. "Let's do this." They entered the bank at 7:02 a.m. when the doors opened. Victor approached the manager's desk with the confidence of a man who owned half of Manhattan's real estate, which technically he did. "I need access to safe deposit box 1947. The manager, a nervous man in his 50s, checked his records. "That box is registered to a Thomas Mitchell. Are you authorized?" Victor slid a forged authorization letter across the desk. Marcus had prepared it overnight, complete, with Mitchell's signature lifted from financial documents Derek Thompson had left behind. The manager examined the letter, then nodded. "Right this way, sir." They descended to the vault level. The manager used his key. Victor used the key Marcus's team had retrieved from Mitchell's hotel room 4 hours earlier, exactly where Vanessa said it would be. The box slid open. Inside was a single glass vial filled with clear liquid. Beside it, a handwritten note. Victor picked up the note and read it. "Did you really think it would be this easy?" His blood went cold. The vault door slammed shut behind them. Victor spun around. The manager was gone. The heavy steel door had sealed completely. Marcus was already on his radio. "We're locked in. Vault level. Get us out now." Static. No response. Victor pulled out his phone. No signal. "He jammed the communications," Marcus said grimly. "This was a trap. The antidote." Victor looked at the vial in his hand. "Is it real or fake? Only one way to find out." A speaker crackled to life somewhere in the ceiling. Thomas Mitchell's voice filled the vault, calm and amused. "Good morning, Mr. Castellano. I see you found my little gift." Victor's jaw clenched. "Let us out, Mitchell." "I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, when my daughter told you about this box, she also told me. We've been planning this moment for quite some time." "She betrayed you. She did exactly what I trained her to do. Tell the mark what they want to hear. Lead them into the trap, then spring it." Mitchell's laugh echoed off the steel walls. "You were so desperate to save your mother that you walked right in." Marcus was examining the walls, looking for weaknesses, escape routes, anything. "What do you want, Mitchell?" "I already told you what I want. $2 million, my daughter's release, safe passage." A pause. "But now the price has gone up. I want $5 million, and I want the girl." Victor's entire body went rigid. "What girl?" "Don't insult my intelligence, Grace Williams, the little maid you've become so attached to." Mitchell's voice turned silky. "My daughter told me all about her, how you look at her, how you protect her, how you paid her brother's hospital bills like some lovesick fool. She has nothing to do with this. She has everything to do with this. You made her a target the moment you let yourself care about her." Mitchell's tone hardened. $5 million, my daughter, and Grace Williams delivered to a location I'll specify. You have 18 hours. And if I refuse, then you die in that vault. Your mother dies without the antidote. And I come for the girl anyway, except I won't be gentle about it." The speaker went dead. Victor stood motionless, his mind racing. 18 hours, trapped in a vault, his mother dying, Grace in danger, and Thomas Mitchell holding all the cards. "Boss." Marcus's voice was tense. "The walls are 6 inches of reinforced steel. The door is magnetically sealed. Even if our men breach the bank, it could take hours to cut through." "Then we don't wait for them to cut through." Victor looked around the vault with new eyes. When this bank was built, there were concerns about fire safety. They installed emergency ventilation shafts throughout the building, including the vault level. Marcus frowned. "Those shafts are barely 2 feet wide." "Wide enough." Victor was already moving, examining the ceiling tiles. "My father brought me here when I was 12. He showed me every escape route in every building he owned. This bank was one of them." He found what he was looking for behind a ceiling panel in the far corner, a narrow shaft leading upward barely visible in the dim emergency lighting. "Can you fit through there?" "No, but you can." Victor turned to Marcus. "Get out. Get to Grace. Don't let her out of your sight until I arrive." "I'm not leaving you here." "That's not a request." Victor's voice hardened. "Grace is the target now. Mitchell wants to use her against me. If he gets his hands on her before I get out, everything I've done means nothing." Marcus hesitated. 17 years of loyalty warring with 17 years of orders. "Go, Marcus. Protect her like you would protect me." Marcus finally nodded. "If you die in here, I won't." Marcus climbed into the shaft and disappeared into darkness. Victor was alone. He sat down with his back against the steel wall and looked at the vial in his hand. Real or fake hope or despair, he wouldn't know until he got out of here and gave it to his mother. If he got out. Victor closed his eyes and thought about Grace, her smile when she read poetry to his mother, the way she had cried when he told her about Elijah's surgery, the tremble in her voice when she asked him to come back to her. He had spent 17 years building walls around his heart. She had broken through them without even trying. He wasn't going to let Thomas Mitchell take that from him. Victor opened his eyes and began to think. Meanwhile, Grace sat beside Margaret's bed, holding her hand, while the old woman drifted in and out of consciousness. The doctors had done everything they could without the antidote, fluids, monitoring, prayers, but Margaret was fading. "Grace," Margaret's voice was a whisper, "where's Vincent?" "He's getting the medicine. He'll be back soon." "Liar." Margaret smiled weakly. "You've never been good at lying, child. It's one of the things I love about you." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "He's in trouble, isn't he?" "I don't know. I haven't heard from him in hours." Margaret's hand tightened on hers with surprising strength. Listen to me carefully. Whatever happens to me, you have to stay strong. You have to be there for Vincent. Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine. I'm 70 years old. I've lived a full life. I've seen my son become the man I always knew he could be, and I've seen him fall in love for the first time since Sophia. Margaret's eyes searched Grace's face. He loves you, child. He might not have said it yet, but I know my son. He loves you. Grace's tears spilled over. And I think you love him too. I barely know him. You know his heart. You saw it when he was watching you through those cameras. You saw kindness in a man the world calls cruel. You saw hope in a man who had forgotten how to hope. Margaret smiled. That's love, Grace. The real kind. The kind that doesn't care about time or circumstances or logic. Grace couldn't speak. Promise me something. Anything. When this is over, when Vincent comes home, don't push him away. Don't let fear stop you from being happy. Margaret's voice grew fainter. I spent too many years afraid. After my husband died, I closed my heart. I didn't let anyone in except Vincent, and I've regretted it every day since. Miss Maggie, promise me. Grace squeezed her hand. I promise. Margaret smiled and closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. The monitors beside her bed began to beep with increasing urgency. Grace screamed for the doctors. 3 hours passed. Victor had found a weakness in the vault's construction, a maintenance panel that had been welded shut decades ago but had corroded over time. With nothing but his bare hands and raw determination, he worked at the panel until his fingers bled. At 10:23 a.m., the panel gave way. He crawled through a narrow passage filled with dust and debris, following ancient ventilation ducts, until he emerged in a maintenance corridor 2 floors above. His phone buzzed to life the moment he cleared the jamming zone. 17 missed calls, all from Marcus. He called back immediately. Boss? Marcus's voice was frantic. Thank God, we've been trying to reach you for hours. I'm out. What's happening? It's your mother. She went into cardiac arrest 20 minutes ago. The doctors revived her, but they say she doesn't have much time. Victor's heart stopped. And Grace. Silence. Marcus, where is Grace? She's gone, boss. The world tilted. What do you mean gone? Mitchell's men hit the house while the doctors were working on your mother. They took Grace. Left a note. Marcus's voice shook. It says to meet him at the old shipyard at midnight, alone, or Grace dies. Victor leaned against the wall trying to breathe. Everything he had fought for, everyone he had tried to protect, it was all falling apart. Get me a car. Now. He reached the mansion at 11:47 a.m. Margaret was conscious but barely hanging on. The doctors had done everything possible, but without the antidote, it was only a matter of time. Victor sat beside her bed and pulled the vial from his pocket. Mom, I have the medicine, but I don't know if it's real. Margaret's eyes opened, focused on his face. Give it to me. It could be poison. Mitchell could have... Give it to me, Vincent? Her voice was stronger than it had been in days. I would rather die taking a chance than die doing nothing. Victor looked at the vial in his hand, then at his mother's face. She had never been afraid of anything. Not poverty, not violence, not death. He wasn't going to let her down now. He uncapped the vial and helped her drink the contents. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Margaret gasped. Her eyes went wide. Her body convulsed. The monitor screamed with alarms. Victor grabbed her hand. Mom, stay with me. The doctors rushed in, pushing him aside, working frantically. Victor stood in the doorway, watching, praying to a God he had stopped believing in years ago. After an eternity, the convulsions stopped. The alarms quieted. Margaret's breathing steadied. The lead doctor turned to Victor with wonder in his eyes. Her vitals are stabilizing. Whatever was in that vial, it's working. Victor's knees nearly buckled with relief, but he couldn't celebrate yet. Grace was still out there, and midnight was coming. The old shipyard sat at the edge of the East River, abandoned for decades, a skeleton of rust and decay. Victor arrived alone at 11:52 p.m., exactly as Mitchell had demanded. He had left Marcus and the others 3 blocks away. If things went wrong, they would move in. But Victor knew that if Mitchell saw anyone else, Grace would die. He walked through the gates into darkness. "Mitchell," his voice echoed off empty cargo containers. "I'm here. Show yourself." A spotlight blazed to life, blinding him momentarily. When his vision cleared, he saw Grace. She was tied to a chair in the center of the open space. Her mouth gagged, her eyes wide with terror. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead. Thomas Mitchell stood behind her, one hand resting casually on her shoulder. "Mr. Castellano, thank you for being punctual." Victor's hands clenched into fists. "Let her go." "First we discuss terms." Mitchell pulled out a gun and pressed it against Grace's temple. "Did you bring the money?" "It's in the car outside the gates." "And my daughter?" "I arranged for her transfer to a minimum security facility. She'll be released on parole within 6 months." Mitchell's eyebrows rose. "You actually did it. I'm impressed. Now let her go." "Not quite yet." Mitchell's finger caressed the trigger. "You see, I've been thinking. Even with the money and my daughter's freedom, there's still a problem. You. As long as you're alive, you'll be hunting me, looking for revenge. I can't spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder." Victor's blood went cold. "You said you'd let her go if I met your demands." "I said a lot of things." Mitchell smiled. "Here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to transfer the money to my account. Then you're going to watch me put a bullet in this girl's head. Then I'm going to put one in yours. Clean, simple, final." Grace made a muffled sound of terror behind her gag. Victor's mind raced. "You're making a mistake, Mitchell." "Am I?" "Your daughter told me something before I left the prison. She told me you taught her that love is weakness, that trust is stupidity, that the only person you can rely on is yourself." Mitchell's smile flickered. "She was always a good student." "She also told me that you watched your wife die because you couldn't afford medicine, that you've spent your whole life trying to make sure you never feel that powerless again." "Careful, Mr. Castellano. I understand that feeling." Victor took a step forward. "I watched someone I loved die once. Sophia, the woman before Vanessa. I couldn't protect her, and I've spent 17 years making sure I never feel that helpless again." "Touching story. What's your point?" "My point is that I know what it's like to lose everything. And I know what you do when you have nothing left to lose." Victor's voice dropped. "You fight. You claw. You do whatever it takes to survive. Which is exactly what I'm doing. No, what you're doing is creating an enemy who will never stop coming for you." Victor took another step. "You can kill Grace. You can kill me. But my people will hunt you forever. My mother will put every resource she has into destroying you. And your daughter, the one you sacrificed everything to protect, will spend the rest of her life in prison because I'll make sure the deal I arranged falls apart." Mitchell's hand tightened on the gun. "Or you can walk away. Take the money. Take your freedom. Disappear somewhere my reach doesn't extend. And I give you my word, as the head of the Castellano family, that I will never come after you." "Your word," Mitchell laughed. "The word of a mafia boss. The word of a man who loves that woman you're holding a gun to." Victor's voice cracked. "I'm begging you, Mitchell. Don't make me watch someone else die because I couldn't protect them. Take everything I have. Just let her live." Silence stretched across the shipyard. Mitchell stared at Victor. Something shifted in the old man's eyes. Something almost human. "You really do love her." "More than my own life." Mitchell looked down at Grace, then back at Victor. Then he laughed. It was a bitter sound filled with decades of pain and cynicism. "My wife would have said the same thing about me once, before I became what I am." He shook his head slowly. "Love. After everything I've done, I still can't escape it." He lowered the gun. "Take her." Victor didn't hesitate. He rushed forward, pulling the gag from Grace's mouth, cutting her bonds with a knife from his pocket. "Victor." Grace sobbed his name. "Victor, I thought—" I know, it's okay. You're safe now." He pulled her into his arms and held her while she cried. Mitchell watched them with an unreadable expression. "The money." Victor looked up. "Transfer it. Marcus has the account information. Mitchell nodded slowly. He started to walk away, then stopped. For what it's worth, Mr. Castellano, I hope you're smarter than I was. I hope you don't let the darkness swallow you the way it swallowed me. He glanced at Grace. She's worth more than money, worth more than power. Don't forget that. He disappeared into the shadows. Victor held Grace tighter. Is it over? She whispered. It's over. 3 months later, the Castellano mansion had transformed. Margaret sat in the garden stronger than she had been in years. The antidote had worked completely, and the doctors couldn't explain her remarkable recovery. But Margaret knew. Love had saved her, the love of her son, the love of the young woman who had refused to leave her side. Grace stood at the window of the bedroom that had once belonged to Victor's grandmother. It was her room now, her home, her family. Victor came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? Everything. Grace leaned back against him. 6 months ago, I was a maid, sleeping in a basement, trying to figure out how to pay my brother's hospital bills. Now I'm living in a mansion. Elijah's transplant was successful, and I'm... You're what? She turned to face him. I'm in love with a mafia boss. Victor smiled. That real smile she had only seen a handful of times, the one that made him look younger, softer, human. I'm in love with a maid. Grace laughed. Former maid. Former maid who saved my mother. Who saved me. He cupped her face in his hands. Grace Williams, you showed me that the walls I built to protect myself were actually keeping me prisoner. You showed me that love isn't weakness. It's strength. The only strength that really matters. Tears streamed down Grace's cheeks. Your mother told me something when she was sick. She made me promise not to let fear stop me from being happy. Are you happy? Grace thought about everything she had lost. Her mother who abandoned her, her father who hurt her, her sister who died in her arms, all the years of struggle and pain and loneliness. And then she thought about everything she had found. Elijah healthy and whole, Margaret who loved her like a daughter, and Victor who had seen her when she was invisible and loved her when she had nothing to give. I'm terrified, she admitted. I'm terrified that this is all a dream, that I'll wake up and be back in that basement. Then I'll spend every day proving to you that this is real. Victor kissed her forehead. Every day for the rest of our lives. That's a long time. Not long enough. He kissed her then, really kissed her, and Grace felt the last of her walls crumble into dust. In the garden below, Margaret watched through the window. She saw her son holding the woman who had saved them all. She saw two broken people healing each other. She saw hope where there had been only darkness. She thought of her husband dead for nearly 40 years, thought of all the prayers she had sent up over the decades begging for her son to find happiness. Finally, those prayers had been answered, not with a princess or a socialite or anyone the world would have expected, but with a maid, a black maid from the Bronx who had lost everything and still chose to love, who had knelt on cold marble to gather pills, who had stood up to monsters and never backed down. Margaret smiled and whispered to the sky, "Thank you for sending her to us, for giving my son a reason to live." A warm breeze swept through the garden, rustling the flowers Grace had planted just last week, and Margaret knew with the certainty of a woman who had survived 70 years of joy and sorrow that everything was exactly as it was meant to be. 1 year later, Victor and Grace stood in that same garden, surrounded by family and friends, speaking vows that neither of them had ever imagined saying. Elijah, healthy and strong, walked his sister down the aisle. Margaret, tears streaming down her face, watched her son become a husband. Marcus, who had never smiled in 17 years of service, couldn't stop smiling. And when Victor kissed his bride, the applause echoed off the walls of the mansion that had once been filled with lies and betrayal, but was now filled with something far more powerful. Love, the real kind, the kind that doesn't care about where you come from or what you've lost, the kind that sees the truth in people when everyone else sees masks, the kind that saves. And Grace Williams, once a maid who slept in a basement and cried alone in the dark, was finally home. Because home isn't a place. Home is the person who sees you. Home is the person who stays. Home is the person who loves you not despite your broken pieces, but because of them. And for Victor and Grace, home would always be each other. Forever.